The Bible is a living word that reads us as we read it. It's a person, a voice that proves that time is not linear, as one sentence can confirm the past, guide the present, and declare the future. You are here. I am here. He is here. We are here. Right now. In the tomorrow of yesterday and in the yesterday of tomorrow. I thank you for joining today. So we're back. Thank you so much for joining once again. In our last episode, we talked about Saul's obsession with hunting David to wipe him out. Town after town, David escaped from Saul because the Lord was with him. And no matter how many people tried to sell David out, the Lord would not allow David to be found by Saul. There was one time at the wilderness of Maon that Saul and David were very close. They were literally on opposite sides of the same mountain. And just as Saul was closing in on David, Saul got word that the Philistines had attacked. Saul left to fight against the Philistines, and when he was able to turn his attention back to hunting David, he heard that David was in En-Gedi. So he assembled 3,000 men and headed to En-Gedi. While he was there, his stomach started rumbling a little bit. I imagine he started sweating. It got increasingly more and more difficult for him to focus. He was uncomfortable. Saul found a cave and whispered to a couple of his men, yeah, I'm gonna go in here for a little while, but I'm all right. Don't come check on me. I'm good, but I need to spend a little time in here, so just I'll be back. I imagine a couple of the bodyguards posted up at the mouth of the cave, unaware that the real danger was already in the cave. Saul hurried into the cave. He found somewhere comfortable to squat, and then he commenced to relieve himself. David and his men were far back into the cave. They start hearing all this commotion. And they recognized what was going on and that Saul was in one of the most vulnerable positions that he could be in. David's men began to whisper, yo, look at God. Wow, he literally is serving your enemy to you on a poo poo platter. Let's go. David snuck up, weapon drawn. He crept up closer and closer and closer. And then he cut off a piece of the hem of Saul's robe. Hold up. Wait a minute. David, this man has made it his mission to take you out. He's come close multiple times to pinning you to a wall. He's right here in front of you, grunting, sweating, vulnerable, and you cut off a piece of his robe? Make it make sense, David. The moment that David cut a piece of the hem of Saul's robe, he started to feel bad. He went back and told his men, the Lord wouldn't let me do it, man. I couldn't do it. Shoot, I feel bad for doing this. He's holding up the little piece of fabric. Regardless of everything that's going on, he's still the Lord's anointed. And I dare not raise my hand against the Lord's anointed. Mind you, that David is talking about a man who just ordered that an entire town of the Lord's anointed priests be wiped out. But David refuses to raise his hand against him. And also, he's talking to a whole bunch of men that have found themselves in a little bit of trouble or debt. They're wired just a little bit differently. So I imagine they're looking at David like he might have lost his mind just a little bit. And they like, listen, respectfully, we don't share in that sentiment. So let us get him. If you don't want to get him, let us get him. Let the blood be on our hands. And David wouldn't let his men attack. After about 7 years later, Saul was finally done. He left the cave feeling much lighter, and I imagine he kind of looked over at his men like, you don't really want to go in there. David gave him a head start, and then shortly after Saul left the cave, David also walked out of the cave, and he called out to Saul, my lord, the king. Saul turned around. David postured himself in a position of honor. He bowed. And then David spoke up. Why are you entertaining lies that will have you believe that I'm out to get you? You see with your own eyes that if I really wanted to take you out, I would have today. Don't get me wrong. Some of my men did urge me to take you out, but I refused. I will not harm you because you are the Lord's anointed. He raised the piece of fabric that he cut from the hem of Saul's robe. I cut this when I could have cut you. I didn't. You out here hunting me like I'm an animal, like I've done something wrong. I've wronged you in no way. And while I could have taken you out, I'm leaving that to the Lord. May the Lord avenge the wrongs that you've done to me. After David finished speaking, Saul recognized his voice and he began to weep. David, you are a much better man than I am. You spared me when all I've done was sought to take you out. May the Lord reward you well. Then Saul said something very significant. Now I realize that you are surely going to be king, and Israel will flourish under you. All that I ask, just swear this to me, that when this happens, you will not destroy my family and you won't wipe out my descendants. David promised Saul with an oath, and then Saul went on about his way. He went home, and David and his men went back to the stronghold. A few things that I want to point out or refresh your memory on. In 1 Samuel chapter 15, when Saul disobeyed the Lord by not completely destroying the Amalekites, Samuel got on to Saul and let him know that the Lord had rejected him because he rejected the Lord's command. And as Samuel was turning to leave, Saul tried to hold him back and he tore the hem of Samuel's robe. When that happened, Samuel told Saul, "The Lord has torn the kingdom from you and has given it to someone better than you." Fast forward, right? David just cut the hem of Saul's robe and presented it to him. I imagine that Saul had a flashback to the whole situation when he tore Samuel's robe and when Samuel said that. Here we see that Saul actually recognized, he said it out of his own mouth. He said, "David, you are a better man than me. Now I realize that you are going to be king." It was an aha moment for Saul. Before, I believe that Saul had an inclination. I think he believed that David could be the one. But now he's very clear about the fact, wow, you really are a better man than me, and you will be king. Another thing I want to share, because nothing is for nothing. In ancient days, the hem of the robe was more than just a hem of the robe. The hem was actually decorated and it matched the person's status, authority, reputation, their covenant standing with God. The hem of the robe was actually a symbol of the identity of the person who wore it. So when David cut the hem of Saul's robe, he didn't physically harm Saul. But what he did was he symbolically diminished Saul's identity as king. Saul realized it and he couldn't even fight it. Much later on, when we get into the New Testament, we likely will discuss a story about this woman who was very, very sick. She was desperate for healing. She heard about a king. She tried all of the medications, all of the remedies. She was broke because she spent all of her money just trying to remedy her sickness, desperate to be healed. She approached this king. She pressed through the crowd and just touched the hem of his robe. She received healing, but she also, in doing so, was acknowledging who he was. She connected her faith with who she believed him to be, touched the hem of his robe, and as a result, she ended up being healed. Very significant. Now Saul gets it. He recognizes David is a better man. He could have taken me out, but he didn't. I realize now that he is going to be king and Israel is going to flourish under his rulership. But in the next episode, we'll talk more about how this realization actually impacted the way that Saul moved. I look forward to discussing that further if the Lord blesses me to record another episode. Thank you so much for your support. If you haven't already, please like, subscribe, share. I'd love to hear from you, so leave me a comment. And until we meet again, bye for now.